Well, good morning, Miramar. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. As always, you can check us out on all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City of Miramar. And with me today, we have a very special guest. She is Rachel DeStefano. She is a licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and has a master's. She has actually a certified addiction specialist as well. So she has been very busy, and I'm sure this time of the year she's even busier. We're going to talk about how people can get around the feelings that they have, especially when it comes to around the holidays or just in life in general, because it seems like everything is so heavy. So, Rachel, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
No problem. So let's talk a little bit about, particularly around the holiday time or at the end of the year. It seems that people go into sometimes some people go into a shell. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what that's about? And you wouldn't think so because we live in sunny South Florida. People come here to be happy.
Right? We think seasonal affective disorder or depression is only up north, and yet I think that it can kind of apply regardless of where we live because there is almost this built-in like expectation of being joyous and being excited about the holidays. And I think that that's like perpetuated by social media, by all of the movies we watch, right? By, it being the most happiest time of the year. Isn't that what the lyrics say in the song? And so there's all of this pressure. So if we don't feel that way, there's almost this tendency, I think, to internalize it, to judge ourselves, to feel shame, and to say, like, what's wrong with me that I'm not matching this idea of how I'm supposed to be during this time of year? And that can feel really lonely for folks, I think, if they don't fit that mold.
And when you say lonely, that's not just for people who are single and who may not have anyone to celebrate the holidays with. That's just a feeling that some people have overall.
Absolutely. I mean, it could go as deep as, let's say that the holidays were triggering for someone when they were a kid. Let's say that there's almost what we call this anniversary reactions, where the body remembers, maybe a memory of what the holidays brought up. It could be just looking over at someone else and saying, oh, they look so much happier, or maybe they're able to afford all this stuff for their families, but maybe I'm not. And there's loneliness that comes from this comparison or from recalling what maybe has happened during the holidays that didn't like align with the way that we would have liked them to have been.
But okay, so as a, licensed mental health therapist, and I know you see many people who are dealing with this, it's almost the question of how can you not be happy during this time? Because I mean, there's music playing everywhere, there's lights and everything's decorated, and it would just seem like it would lift your spirits immediately if you come into that type of atmosphere.
And I think that's part of the predicament or the struggle, right? Is that like there's this built-in belief, and you said it yourself, that we should. And should is such a interesting word. I tell my clients this all the time, that like should almost is like its own ball of like shame. Like we should feel this way. And if we don't, then right, then something's different or bad with me. So it's almost like, yes, I agree with you that Christmas music does tend to lift me up, right? It's like, oh, yay, lights, very pretty. I have two kids and I like to watch it through their eyes as well. But for somebody that isn't automatically connecting with how they should feel, it feels incredibly lonely, and like they're not like able to tap into something everyone else can, so there's something different about them. And so like imagine walking around a place and seeing everybody else all lit up about it, and looking like at yourself and being like, but I don't feel that way, because depression doesn't always make sense, right? It's not something we can always explain. And I think that's what we often get like caught up in when it comes to like, well, why aren't they? It's not always something we can answer. It's not always a question of why. Sometimes it just is,
Okay.
which is kind of confusing.
And you also, because maybe you don't even know that that is what it is, We mentioned about the weather being one of the factors, particularly at this time of the year, that most people go into their shells or they're, depressed. Of course, you would think, again, here in sunny South Florida, you're over on the southwest coast of Florida, that we wouldn't have that issue. But there's so much more to it. And how do you know if it's depression or I'm just having a bad day? I don't feel good today.
I would say usually that has to do with like the persistence of it. It would be, is this a reasonable response to something going on in my life? So I'll tell folks all the time, if you're sad and someone in your life has passed away, while I don't wish you to be sad, it makes sense that you're sad. Like that is a reasonable response to what's happening. But if someone's waking up and there's nothing really major different in their life, but they're suddenly like feeling a lack of energy or excitement or passion, or they're just feeling down or low, right? And it's continuing to persist, then we're looking at like, is this some chemical depression? Is this something else that then, we might need support for? Um, and I know for me personally, I know you're asking me as the therapist, but I very much like to be human first, therapist second. One of the most humbling experiences for me was I'm divorced, so it was navigating the holidays single after having the joyous experience of getting to have family and now having to co-parent right over the holidays with an ex where I don't always get to do holidays in the way I would like. And so like there's so many different variations of what could make us depressed that like I almost feel like those of us that have never had to feel depressed during the holidays are coming from a place of privilege. And so that was really humbling for me personally to experience.
Wow. Okay. So even the therapist can experience some of these same feelings. But you obviously are working
Yes.
with people who are dealing with this, maybe not just during this time of the year, but throughout the year. If you're just tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. We are speaking with Rachel DeStefano. She is a licensed mental health counselor, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and master certified addiction specialist. We haven't even gotten into that because I think a lot of people will possibly use drugs or alcohol to cope with these feelings. So obviously, that is probably not a good idea. And I'm sure as a therapist, you will tell them that.
Oh, it's extremely triggering for a lot of folks. Like I have folks in recovery and I'm like, we have to be wary of the holidays. Like, and even thinking about it, like drinking culture, right? It's very much eggnog, right? Like, we have a day off of work.
Party.
What is that an excuse for? Yes, let's party. And so it is. It's a time to be mindful if that is something that, folks struggle with. Like, how can we be supportive of people who might be triggered during this time?
Okay. And how can people, I guess, work through it? Because, obviously, can you keep busy? Can you find a new project to be on? Can you go out and be with other people, even though you don't feel like it?
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. I think the first thing I would say is to advocate for what you need, to be honest. So if you are struggling, people don't necessarily know you're struggling unless you tell them, right? We're not mind readers, even though we tend to get very prickly around people don't know what we're thinking or don't respond, right? The reality is we don't know how someone's feeling unless they tell us. So if we can vocalize, if we can ask for support, if we can give ourselves permission to feel that way, right? Like, so I tell my clients all the time, like, give yourself permission to feel sad. Like, don't gaslight or bully yourself into feeling a different way than you are, because then you're kind of doing to self what you get mad at when other people do it to you.
Okay.
So like being kind to yourself. But yes, getting out of the house, getting out of your head, right? Like loneliness and depression thrive in isolation. So if we put ourselves out there and act as if, maybe like through movement, right? Move a muscle, change a thought. Maybe we can change how we feel.
And how would they do that? Or what would be some of the ways that someone could do that?
talk to friends, ask friends to hang out, even though you're depressed. And when we're depressed, we're less likely to reach out. It's almost like if depression is what we call an absence of energy, if anxiety is an excess of energy, depression is a lack of it. So we almost need to create energy. And so we have to like move and we have to ask and we have to talk in order to kind of get out of that. But also, I like to tell my folks that are triggered around the holidays that like they're allowed to create new rituals and routines. They're
Mhm.
allowed to create new memories, especially if there's trauma attached to the holidays. Like if we're grieving that things look or feel different. So for me, it's okay on the holidays that I don't have my kids, then there's almost an opportunity for me to reclaim them and say, okay, like what can I do for myself? Like can I date myself? Can I treat myself, right? Like what were things as a kid that I enjoyed? Oh, I loved that little Christmas movie. Can I watch that? Like can I just sit on the couch with my favorite snack and have that and permission to do that, right?
Okay. And so, and this is, I guess it could go for any holiday. It's not just the big three at the end of the year, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or actually Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, that people feel this way. It could be Valentine's Day. It could be,
Yes.
around Easter, even 4th of July, if that's how you feel. But I want to ask this question. Are we ever really alone? I always feel like you always have somebody that's in your corner, or maybe you don't. I mean, obviously, you've been dealing with patients for many years, but there's got to be somebody that you can call, that you can talk to, that you can depend on to be there for you. Or maybe I'm wrong in assuming that.
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point, though. And I have two thoughts in response to what you're saying. The first is we're quick to scan for evidence that reinforces the narrative in our head. So if the narrative in our head is, I'm alone, or this time of the year stinks, or nobody likes me, then we're going to find evidence to support it if we're scanning for it. So sometimes it's about looking for exceptions. I'll tell my clients, okay, well, like who is one person that showed up for you, or what was one moment in your day where it doesn't have to be a big J of joy. It could be like a tiny itty bitty joyous moment, right? And so we're almost challenging people to look outside of what they'd naturally be scanning for. And that's, I think, a big piece of it, right?
And so, with that, do do people sometimes also push people away that may
Oh,
be trying to that may be
yes.
trying to help them or trying to
Well,
come to them?
yeah, because we are, whether we want to admit it or not, attached to that narrative. So sometimes we self sabotage, right?
Hmm.
To create the outcome that we thought was going to happen because we convince ourselves, see, I was right. And we confuse predictability with control and safety. Um, but getting back to your question you said a minute ago, because I forgot that second point. I know I said I had two ideas and I was like, it left and it came back. You asked, are we ever really alone? And I like that because as a therapist, one of the things that I work with a lot with my clients is what we call inner child work. So, this idea that there's like an itty bitty little part of ourself, like a child within us, that represents kind of like this wounded, younger, maybe more reactive, more emotional part of ourself. And so many of us are disconnected from that part of ourself because we're looking outside of self for connection that we forget the way in which we can connect inward. And
Okay.
so I always have my clients go back within, right? It's like, if you're feeling disconnected, how is that perhaps a mirror for the way in which you're treating yourself? Like, how are you not taking care of yourself where you're so sensitive of other people not taking care of you? Um, how are you maybe forgetting about like spirituality or, your sense of like, a higher power or whatever it is that you believe that might give you a sense of like comfort? And so I do think there's ways to challenge folks that are stuck in this like, I'm alone mentality.
I love that because basically you're saying, hey, love on yourself.
Hmm.
I think too, though, maybe a lot of people don't know how to do that, or they think they're not worthy of that,
Mm,
whatever,
absolutely.
yeah, the reasons may be. But no, you are worthy. I mean, you are you, and if no one else loves you, you've got to love yourself for sure. But there's always somebody out there who cares about you. And what or how do you think people should go about getting help? I mean, obviously you are a therapist, and if you are, if they want to talk with you, obviously we're going to give your information out. But, should they trust friends? Should they trust family? Or should it be a professional like yourself that can help them navigate through this? Because maybe we, as family, we say things sometimes and we think we're doing the right thing, but we're
Yes.
not.
And we're human, right? We're human. And I think we can model that, like, part of our humanness is that, like, we make mistakes, and myself included, right? I like to tell folks, like, know your audience. And what I mean by that is know what your audience has taught you in terms of their emotional availability, know their capacity, know their sensitivity. If your audience tends to be critical, then maybe you shouldn't be depending on them for, like, unconditional positive regard or love, right? So if your family and friends tend to be more critical, then know your audience and say, they might not be able to give me what I need right now. So, yes, maybe I should see a professional. However, if there are people in your life who are willing to show up for you, then it almost becomes a question of, how can I challenge myself to be vulnerable? Because so many of us are afraid to be vulnerable. How do I let them be a friend or a family member to me? Because it's a two-way street.
Right. Every day, all day. If you're just tuning in, thank you so much for watching the show. I'm your host, Tamara G. We have with us today Rachel DeStefano. She is a licensed mental health counselor. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and also master certified addiction specialist. And we're talking today about spending the holidays solo, strategies to cope with loneliness and loss. So we've talked about the lonely, regardless of how you came to be lonely. For instance, I will tell you my story. I mean, I've been single my entire life, never been married. And the holidays used to be, even though I liked them, they used to be a bad time for me. Not that I got depressed or I wasn't calling it depression, but I would get down. But I'd have Christmas parties to go to. People are inviting me to events, and yet I didn't feel like I was connected because I didn't have someone special, meaning a man, to
Mhm.
be with during that time. I've gotten over that. I've since gotten over that. But then we've also talked a little bit about loss. And I have a friend who, dealt with the deaths of both her mother and father within 2 weeks of each other last November. And I don't even know how she's still standing, but she
Mhm.
is. And so, how do you, deal with that type of loss, like a permanent loss, not somebody that, I can
Sure.
find a boyfriend, but, parents,
Yes. Or
kids.
a finite period at end of sentence, right? Like, that person will never exist in the capacity they once did for the holidays. And we often feel that more, I think, during these times when we're taught our family experiences, right? Or when we're conditioned to believe, like, this is when we connect with family and friends. And I call this kind of this compounded, complicated grief, and it almost feels unfair, right? That when somebody passes away around a joyous, exciting time, like a birthday, or I had a friend whose dog passed away literally the day before she gave birth to a baby. And it's like, oh, wow, like, to have such high and such low, and for that to feel so confusing, and for, like, one to always be tied to the other. Like, for your friend who lost two folks in November, it's, well, that feels very unfortunate that she cannot think of Thanksgiving or start to brace after, like, Halloween for
Right.
the feelings that will always now come up during that year. So I tell a lot of people it's about having to reclaim that time, knowing that that grief isn't going to go away. Like, the reality of that being a death anniversary is not going to go away.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, the mother was not expected to pass. The dad was
Mhm.
suffering with Alzheimer's, and they were expecting him to pass. The mother's death was totally unexpected. It happened on Thanksgiving, and
Oh,
2 weeks later, her father passed. So she went to two funerals within 3 weeks and they were her parents. So
yes.
yes, I try to love on her as much as I can during this time, just every day, because you just don't know what people are going through.
You really don't. And at the end of the day, it's So us being mindful of like how impacted our nervous systems are. Like I'm just thinking about like her poor nervous system. It was on and then it was on again and then it was fatigued and exhausted and then your nervous system as her friend trying to care for her, right? Like we're all just a bundle of nerves sensitive to all this input.
Right,
Uh,
exactly. Well,
yeah.
and if people would love to speak with you or any another therapist, but particularly with you, how can they get in touch with you, Rachel? Because I think that having someone that, and this is what therapists do, yeah, you guys stay even keeled, you don't join my pity party, right? You work on making me better, right?
We work on making you feel heard and not judging your emotions. Yes.
There you go. That sounds good too. So how do people get in touch with you?
So I work at a McNulty Counseling and Wellness. So it would be about going on the website, calling up our practice. We have clinicians at multiple locations. We have in person, we have telehealth. And it'd be about looking at our website and reading our bios and seeing who might be a good fit, and then calling up the office to schedule an appointment.
Sounds good. So, all right, McNulty Consulting and Wellness. Again, that is, and I love the fact that you guys have it available in many different ways. You don't have to be in person anymore.
And that can feel so much more approachable to some folks, right? So whether it's a physical disability or a difficulty with, access to a vehicle, or whether it's like social anxiety, right? Like where it's hard or it feels more vulnerable. I think it's important that we can meet people in different ways.
All right. Well, definitely check her out. Rachel DeStefano. She is a licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and master certified addiction specialist, McNulty Consulting. Check them out, Google them. And if you think that you need help, not just during the holidays, but all year round, then you definitely need to check them out, McNulty Consulting. And I'm so happy again, you can do it via teledoc, you can or telephone, you can do it via like we're doing Zoom. So you guys are making it accessible for people to get the help that they need. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Good Morning Miramar. Until next time, I'm Tamara G. See ya.